Most people think reaching my age takes some rare secret. It doesn't. It's a few simple foods I've eaten every single day for as long as I can remember. My name is Emiko Shimabukuro, but most people just call me Grandma Emiko. And at 102, the illnesses that slow most people have rarely troubled me. If you'd like the old Japanese ways of living, warm, well, and simply, take a moment and subscribe. That's what I share here. So let me show you. There is a wooden stool by my window, worn smooth as a river stone, and each morning before the world wakes, I sit upon it with a warm cup cradled in both my hands. From that window, I can see the same gray-blue slice of sea my mother saw and her mother before her. I have watched a great many mornings come up over that water, more than 37,000 of them. If a body cared to count, and before we go one step further, I will tell you an honest thing. I am no doctor. I never studied medicine, I never wore the white coat, and I have never once believed that good health comes sealed inside a costly bottle. What I know the way a woman knows the path to her own garden in the dark. My mother pressed it into my hands. Her mother pressed it into hers. And today, child, I would like to hand it to you the very same way, plain and whole, and with nothing at all held back. I was born on a small island far to the south, where the houses were low and the gardens grew close to the door, and where the old people did not seem to hurry toward death the way I see so many folks hurry now. In my village, it was an ordinary thing to know a woman past 90 who still carried her own water and tended her own beans. Ordinary. We did not think it a marvel. We thought it was simply what a life was, if you fed it right and did not ask too much of it. Years later, men came from the great cities with their notebooks and their measuring cups, and they called our little corner of the world a place where people forget to die. They studied our plates. They studied our bowls. They counted our years and shook their heads in wonder. And do you know what they found at the bottom of all their measuring? No secret, no rare herb, no hidden cure, no medicine you must send away for. Only a handful of humble foods eaten with patience every single day. That is the whole of the treasure, and I mean to hand you every piece of it before we are through. So let me begin not with a food at all, but with a rule my grandmother spoke over every meal of my childhood. So I have gone and done exactly the foods, these old ways, the simple, honest remedies of my island childhood, and I have set them all down plain on paper, so that they need not be lost when I am gone. If you would like to keep them close by your own stove, I have put them together in a little book, and you will find it waiting for you in the description just below this video. There is no trick to it and no great cost. It is only my mother's kitchen, and here's the water. It was once handed down to you, and now let us go on together to the end. Before a single chopstick was lifted, she would say it soft, like a small prayer over the bowls. Eat until you are 8 parts full, not 10, 8. We have an old name for it, hara hachibu, and it means you rise from the table while the body is still gently saying yes, before the heaviness ever comes to sit on you. You see, the belly is slow to speak to the head. It takes its time. By the moment you feel truly, completely full, you have already gone well past what your body ever needed, and the extra does you no good at all. It only weighs you down and wears you out. So we stopped at 8 parts, and we let the last 2 parts arrive on their own a quarter of an hour later, quiet and complete, and we were never once left hungry by it. It is the simplest thing in all the world, and it costs you nothing in truth. It saves you food, it saves you money, it saves your body the labor. It is why our bowls were always small, and why we ate slow, and set the chopsticks down between the bites, and talked, and let a meal take its own good time. If you take only one thing from this old woman today, let it be that. Eat until you are 8 parts full, and let the table teach you patience. Everything else I am about to tell you rests upon it. Now, let me pour you a cup, and we will begin where every single one of my days begins with green tea. There has not been one morning in my long memory without it. In my house, we drink it plain and hot. No sugar, no milk, nothing at all to hide behind. When I was small, my mother would set the leaves to steep in the good clay pot, and the whole kitchen would fill with the smell of cut grass and warm stone. And she would tell me to drink it slow, to hold the cup and let it settle me before the day began its pulling and its tugging. Green tea is a quiet friend. It does not shout at you the way coffee does. The doctors now say it is full of the things that keep a body steady and clean on the inside. They have long, clever names for them, but I only know that a life lived alongside a daily cup of green tea seems to be a calmer, cleaner, longer sort of life. It carries no burden of sugar to trouble the blood. It asks nothing of you but a few minutes of stillness at the start of your day. And that stillness, child, mark me on this, that stillness is half the medicine all on its own. So I drink my green tea before I speak to a single soul, and I let it warm me from the middle out. And I have done so faithfully for very near 100 years, and I do not intend to stop now. Next to my tea, every single morning of my life, there has been a bowl of miso soup. If you knew only one Japanese food and no other, this would be the one I would press into your hands. It is a broth made from fermented soybean paste, stirred gentle into warm water with whatever the garden or the sea has offered up that day. A little seaweed, a few soft cubes of tofu, a handful of green onion cut fine. It is warm and it is salty in a soft and gentle way, and it sits down in the stomach like a kindness on a cold morning. Now hear me plain about why it matters so, for this is the heart of it. The miso is fermented, that is to say, it is alive, aged slow in the crock, the way our grandmothers aged it, sometimes for a year or more. And the living things that grow inside it over all that time are the very things that keep a belly working smooth and easy. And so much of health, I have come to believe, across 100 years of watching, begins down in the belly. Keep the belly happy and settled, and half your troubles simply never come knocking at the door. I have taken my bowl of miso at the start of near every day I have lived, and I make it the old, careful way, never letting it boil hard once the paste goes in, for the fierce, roaring heat kills the good that is alive in it, and then you are only drinking salty water, warm, not raging. That is the secret my mother would whisper across the stove. Warm and never raging. Now, let me tell you of the humble food that fed my whole village through lean years and good the sweet potato. On our island, it was never a treat set aside for a holiday. It was the plain daily bread of the poor, and we were poor And so we ate it morning, noon, and night, roasted whole in the coals, until the skin blackened and split, steamed soft in the pot, sliced cold, and carried in a cloth for the long walk out to the field. The purple and the golden kind grew easy in our thin, stony soil when the finer, prouder crops would sicken and fail, and so it quietly became the ground beneath every meal we ate. And here is the very thing that made those city men marvel and scratch their heads. This poor man's food, this cheap as dirt root we were almost ashamed of, turned out to be one of the finest foods a body can put in its mouth. It is full of the deep, rich color a plant only troubles to make when it is truly good for you, and it fills you long and steady without the sharp rise and the hard, tired fall you get from white bread and white rice. We knew none of that, you understand? We only knew it kept us going and kept us well and cost us next to nothing at all. To this day, I eat a little sweet potato most every day of my life. And when I do, I think of the coals of my childhood and my mother's black-tipped fingers, and I am grateful, past telling, for the poorest food on our table that turned out, in the end, to be the very richest, from the land now to the sea, for I was raised beside it, and it fed us as surely as any garden ever did. I speak now of seaweed, the kombu, the wakame, the dark, thin sheets of nori. To folks who did not grow up beside the water, I know seaweed sounds a strange and slippery thing to put in your mouth, but to us, it was ordinary as salt in the cellar. We gathered it and dried it on long lines in the sun until it crackled, and we tucked it into our soups and wrapped it round our rice, and it gave our plain food a taste of the deep and a quiet wealth of the minerals that the sea holds close and the tired land forgets. There is iodine in it, which the body needs and rarely finds, and 100 small quiet things besides that a person needs in tiny amounts and almost never gets from a modern plate. It is nearly nothing to eat a pinch, a strip, a single folded sheet, and yet it does the silent work of a whole cabinet full of costly colored pills. My mother believed to her bones that the sea kept us strong, and across 100 years I have never once found reason to doubt her. A little seaweed, most every day, is one of the plainest and most generous gifts I could ever hand you. Let me speak now of the soybean, for it came to our table in a dozen different shapes and was the great and gentle strength of all our eating. There was tofu, soft and white and cool, which we ate in our soup and in the heat of summer, with only a little grated ginger and a splash of soy. There was the miso I have already told you of. And there was a food that makes newcomers wrinkle their noses and step back a pace natto, the fermented bean, sticky and strong of smell, an acquired friend, if ever the world made one. I will be straight with you, as I always am. Not one person in 10 loves natto at the first meeting, but it is a living, fermented food, close kin to the miso, and the old people in my village who ate it every morning seemed to keep their bones sturdy and their bellies sound clear into their great old age. And here is the deeper wisdom of it, the thing worth carrying home. Where I come from, we leaned on the bean instead of leaning hard on meat. We ate meat rarely, and when we did, it came as a small guest at the table, never as the great heavy body of the meal. The bean did the heavy lifting. The tofu, the miso, the natto, the plain boiled soybean warm in its pod, and it did it cheaply, and it did it well, year upon year. If you take more of your strength from the humble, patient bean and less from the costly cut of meat, I promise you, your body and your purse will both stand up and thank you for it. And when we did take from the animal world, most often it came up out of the sea, and it came to us small. Little oily fish, the mackerel, the sardine, the silverfish you can hold the whole in the palm of one hand. These were our meat, far more than any beast of the field ever was. We grilled them simple over the coals, with nothing on them but a little salt, and we ate them whole, bones and all in the smallest ones, for the whole fish carries in it what the trimmed white fillet throws carelessly away. The doctors make a great fuss now over the oil in these little fish, the good oil that keeps the heart supple and the head clear and sharp into old age. We knew nothing of oils and hearts. We only knew that the sea gave freely to those who asked, and the little fish were cheap and plentiful in the nets, and so we ate them and thought nothing more about it. A small oily fish, a few times across the week, is worth more to your long health than the grandest, costliest steak that money can buy. That is simply the way of it, over and over. The humble thing, again and again, turns out in the fullness of time to be the wise thing. Now I must tell you about the pickle jar, for no Japanese kitchen of the old and proper sort was ever once without one. Tsukemono, we call them vegetables pickled in nothing but salt and thyme, the daikon radish, the cucumber, the cabbage, and the plum. At the close of every single meal, there would be a small dish of these set out, sharp and bright and cleansing, a little punctuation mark set down at the very end of the eating, and like the miso and the natto before them, the true hidden worth of a pickle is that it too is alive. That old, patient salt pickling wakes up those very same good living things that keep the belly in its proper order. A meal without its little pickle felt unfinished to us the way a song feels unfinished without its last falling note. And you need only a few bites of it. Mind, this is never a food you heap high on a plate. A little at the end every single day. It settles the stomach, it wakes up the tired mouth, and it carries that same quiet living goodness our grandmothers understood in their hands long before any clever person had a fine long word for it. I will name for you one pickle in particular, the pickled plum we call umeboshi, small and wrinkled, and so sour it will make a grown man's whole face fold up on itself. In my childhood, it was medicine as much as food. When a body had a sour, uneasy stomach, or the tiredness of a hot, heavy day, my mother would press one into a bowl of plain rice or hot tea, and somehow it set you right again. One small sour plum, we carried them on long journeys, the way other folk carry their pills. I keep them still in a crock in my cool cupboard, and I take a little when my stomach is uncertain, and more often than not, it answers, and I would be forgetting two old friends if I did not name them here, the ginger and the garlic. Into near every pot that ever sat on my fire, there went a little grated ginger or a clove of garlic crushed beneath the flat of the knife. When the cold season came and the chill went round the village, my grandmother would grate fresh ginger into hot water with a little honey and press the cup into your hands, and it warmed you clear down to the feet and ease the rawness in the throat. It soothes. Mind you, it does not cure. A bad and settled sickness still wants a real doctor, and I would never tell you otherwise. But as a daily, humble, warming thing, a little ginger and garlic in the food is a small kindness you do your body every single day without hardly trying. There is one more I keep close, and that is the mushroom, the shiitake most of all, which we would dry on strings in the rafters until we needed it. Dropped into a simmering broth, a few dried mushrooms give up a deep, dark, meaty savor that let us stretch a poor pot of soup into something rich and satisfying with no meat in it at all. The old folks swore the mushroom kept the body's own quiet defenses strong through the long winters, and whether they had the proof of it or not, I have eaten them all my days and been glad of the eating. A handful of mushrooms in the pot is thrift and flavor and quiet strength, all three at once. And there is a lesson folded inside that dried mushroom if you care to look for it. Nothing on our island was ever truly wasted, nothing thrown out that could be dried on a string and saved and used again when the cold came. Thrift was never a hardship to us. It was simply respect. Respect for the food itself and for the hard hands that grew it. Before I go on to the very last of it, let me sit still with you a moment, for this is the part of my whole day that I love the most. When I was a girl, in the long, slow evenings after the lamp was lit, my mother kept a small book, not a fine book at all, only a stitched bundle of soft worn papers, and in it, in her small, careful hand, she wrote down all the ways of our kitchen. How long to age the miso in the crock before it was ready? Which wild greens to gather on the hillside in which month? The old plain remedies for a cough, a chill, a sour and troubled stomach. That little book was the living memory of our whole family, going back further than anyone could rightly say, and I have carried its ways in my two hands for 100 years now. And it has grieved me, as I have grown very old, to watch how much of this plain good knowing is quietly slipping away out of the world, crowded out by bright boxes and costly bottles and food that comes to the table already dead in a bag. It is no one's wicked scheme, understand. It is only the sad drift of things, the way a well-worn path grows over with weeds when no one troubles to walk it anymore. So we come round at last to the plate itself and to what sat right at the center of it all. Not the meat and not even the rice most days, but the vegetables, a great, wide, generous plateful of them, in more colors than you could easily stop to count. In my village, the garden was the meal, plain and simple, and everything else was only a guest set down beside it. Bitter melon, the nubby green goya, that outsiders cannot abide, but that we grew up to love, sharp and cooling in the worst of the summer heat. Daikon radish, white and long, burdock root, dug up long and brown and earthy from the ground, greens of every kind under the sun, and even the leaves and tops of things that other richer folk would throw clean away as waste. We ate them fresh, we ate them pickled, we ate them cooked down soft in the soup, and above all, we ate a great deal of them until the plate before you was far more garden than it was anything else at all. Meat was a seasoning. You understand, it was never once the meal. If you want the whole of my long eating held in a single picture, Then hold on to this one. A small bowl of rice, a warm bowl of miso, a little fish or a little bean, a whole mountain of colored vegetables, one bright bite of pickle, and a cup of green tea beside it. Small portions, many colors, eaten slow, and stopped always at 8 parts full. That is the whole of it, laid bare. There is no secret hiding behind the curtain. And the grain that lay beneath it all, we kept that honest too, mind you. We did not eat the soft, pale white rice you find heaped up everywhere now. That came to us later, and at first only to the rich, who could afford such a fine and useless thing. We ate our rice brown and whole with the good of it still on, or we stretched it out with barley, or we mixed it right in with the sweet potato and the bean, so that even our very plainest bowl carried far more in it than empty white softness. The whole grain sits down in you, slow and steady, and keeps its word. It does not spike you up high and then drop you down hard and tired an hour later. It keeps burning that long, low, even flame of quiet energy, the very flame that lets an old woman still carry her own water at 90 and still tend her own beans at 100. So keep your grain whole, keep your portion small, and let the vegetables always be the greater part of the plate. That is exactly what my grandmother would tell you if she stood here in my place, and she lived a very, very long time saying it. Now, I would not be an honest woman standing before you if I let you walk away believing that the food alone has carried me all the way to 102. It has not, and I will not pretend to you that it has. I have been fortunate in this life, and good fortune is no one's to promise another soul. I make you no grand vow that these foods will spare you from every trouble under heaven. A bad and stubborn ailment wants a real doctor, and there is no shame and no weakness at all in going straight to one. But what I can tell you, honestly and plainly, is this. I have eaten this simple, humble way for 100 years, and the heavy sicknesses that have taken so very many good people all around me have, for the most part, quietly passed my door by. I cannot prove to you the why of it. I can only show you my table and tell you the whole truth of what has been on it. And the rest of my long life, if you would know it, was made up of other plain and unremarkable things. I walked every single day out to the garden and back, out to see a neighbor and back, my own 2 feet on the same old paths. I kept my hands busy with work and my heart light with small joys. I ate my meals with people, never once alone, if I could help it. For a meal that is shared is a meal that is doubled. And I learned to let go of grudges quickly and cleanly, for a grudge is the very heaviest thing a body can be fool enough to carry uphill. The food is the ground it all stands upon, yes, but a long life is built of far more than only food, and I would be lying to you to leave that part unsaid at the end. So there it all is, child, the whole of what has kept this old woman warm and well and upright on her own 2 feet for 102 years, laid out plain and honest on the table in front of you. A cup of green tea in the quiet of the early morning. A bowl of miso soup kept warm and never raging. The humble sweet potato, the poor man's food that turned out to be the richest of all. A little seaweed drawn up from the generous sea, and the gentle, patient strength of the bean in every one of its shapes. A small oily fish, grilled simple with a little salt. A bright bite of living pickle at the close of the meal, and a sour plum for a troubled stomach. A little ginger and garlic and mushroom in near every pot. A wide, colored plate of vegetables where the meat is only ever a guest, and whole, honest grain kept beneath it all, and spoken soft over every last bit of it, that old and patient rule: eat until you are 8 parts full, eat slow, and eat with the people you love. None of it is rare, none of it is costly. There is not one single thing on all of my table that you could not find or grow or make with your own 2 hands, the very same way my mother made it and her mother made it before her. And that, in the end, is the plain truth. Those city men came so very far to measure and went home again, almost disappointed to have found that the long life they had come hunting for was hiding the whole time in plain and open sight, in the cheapest food and the oldest habits, in a small bowl and a slow meal and a quiet, grateful heart. Now I would dearly love to hear from you wherever you are sitting as you listen. Tell me, down in the comments just below, what is the one food from your own grandmother's kitchen that you still eat faithfully to this day? What did your own people hand down to you in your own part of this wide world? I read every single one of them, and I treasure them, truly, for this is exactly how the old knowing stays alive and warm, not in a book alone, but in the handing down of it from one kitchen to the very next. So tell me where you are writing to me from, and tell me what still sits upon your table from the old days. There is no wrong answer, and no small one. Every kitchen in the world holds a little wisdom worth the saving. And if you would care to sit a while longer with me, I have set out another small talk for you right here on the simple morning habits that have carried me gently through more mornings than I could ever hope to count. Come and sit down. There is always room at my table, and there is always a cup warming on the stove for one more. Until then, child, eat gently, live slowly, and be at peace now, and be well.